basically I shoot colour slides. So I'm working some colour slides, which means that I can come back, in this instance, from Cornwall with hundreds of pictures.
Oh, wow.
And in there might be one or two that actually work, or a piece of them might work. I mean, these are basically a slice through a 35mm slide. This one caught my eye because although I'd been concentrating on the boats and the floats for years, this one I thought was nice because I could put the boats into a secondary position and concentrate on the reflections in the water. Well, not so much the reflections, the shimmer of the water.
Right.
And I thought that just worked well. With just a bit of quayside in the foreground, which is slightly blotted back, just to reduce the strength of it. But mainly it's a picture of light on water. I mean, this one, on the other hand, obviously is in your face, if you like, these flags.
That's
Again, a whole series of photographs because they're fluttering.
Right.
And, you think, oh, that's good. No, another one does it. So you finish up maybe using one or two reference photographs to get the best of the flags. You don't want them all dead and hanging against the canes. You want them waving in the air, That's the advantage of the photographs, really. You can get lots of images, pick the best bit, but maybe you use pieces from more than one image and merge them together.
What's the next step once you've got your photograph?
Once you've got your photograph, produce a drawing to the size that the print is going to be. So you produce a drawing, size the print's going to be, and I mean, because I'm drawing it, I can add in tone, which I then photocopy onto tracing paper, because the requirement is that I'm going to have to obviously work that in reverse on the blocks. So that gives you the opportunity to turn the thing back to front or left to right.
Yeah.
At the same time, I've got to determine how many blocks I'm going to use and what colours are going to be printed on the blocks and which order the colours are going to print in. Generally light to dark, but I mean, you've got an area in the middle where obviously the lightest is the lightest, the darkest the darkest, but in the middle you've got other things happening, so you work out that whole pattern.
Yep.
Remembering you can print some blocks more than once, printing different colours at different times. And then basically you trace that down. I use carbon paper. You trace that down onto liner, which has got a slight kind of ghosting of white on it, which gives the carbon paper a chance to bite. But because you don't want to draw on the back of that, you're going to do 6. Once you've drawn on the back of it, once you wouldn't know where you've been again, so I use another piece of tracing paper on top, which takes the line, and you trace that down. When you trace the next block, you then use a different piece of tracing paper. I then work over with just a water-based ink and paint in the areas that I'm going to leave, right, that I'm not going to cut away. You do that on all the blocks, so you get them all to that same stage, and then basically you can start cutting. Because you've worked out already what you're going to leave, what you're going to take away, and you're turning the block upside down or whatever, you don't have to worry. You can just chop away, pattern make, leave little bits in the corners. The world's your oyster, really, because you're not worrying about is this in, is this out. You've already decided that by painting it whatever. Usually I use a blue, and remember that the block is slightly whitened so that it shows up easily. Chop that all out.
How many blocks would you use to create that?
6 blocks to make that. And as I say, you've worked out the order. You've also thought about overprinting as well, because remember, when you print, I mean, if I've got 10 colours there and I overprint them with this transparent kind of grey here, 10 colours can become 20 colours, because it does something different on each colour. Because I use a lot of reducing medium in my mix of ink. So as I say, that's hitting the colours and doing something different. And the colours are also working over each other as well. So it's a richness. I use a very limited palette. I only basically use about 6 different colours, along with black, white, and the reducing medium. So because I've got that limited palette, when I mix colours from those, you can't fail to get something that lives happily together, because they're not coming from a vast range. I mentioned white. The only colour I print white in is in the first colour, this kind of creamy colour, because I don't want to use white later on because it will start being opaque and cancelling things out. Everything else that goes on top of that doesn't contain white, contains loads of reducing medium, and it gives that transparent colour which is going to be, which is going to build into other colours. I use oil-based inks rather than water-based, and I print, say, 10 or a dozen at a time, each colour, hand burnished using my famous tobacco tin. So it's, ink the block, mask down, paper down, burnish it. You can peel it back and check. You can even take the pins back and peel it that way. It won't go anywhere because it's stuck in the oil-based ink.
Right.
When you're happy with the result, take the whole thing off, hang it up. Do 10 or a dozen of those. They'll dry overnight because I use a little bit of Colbert dryers in the ink as well.
Right.
Dries overnight, next day you can print the next thing. So if you've got 10 printings, basically you've got 10 days. And then, give them in an ideal world, you give them at least a week just hanging there, just hardening up before you start trying to put them in mounts or frames. And that's it.